All right, it's Brandon Vogt on News Radio KKOB. Thanks for being with us. Amory Castillo producing. We're going to jump right in it today because with us is Peter Schweizer, author of Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans. And Peter is the president of the Government Accountability Institute, and Blood Money is now number one on the New York Times bestseller list, and for good reason. Peter, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
All right, and your latest book here, Blood Money, you again take a look at China. Well, what are some of the things that you explore in this book?
Well, it's really looking at a couple of things. There's a lot of things happening in the United States today that are pretty surprising. The rise in violence, the social chaos that we're experiencing. And what the book really argues is that China is engaged in something called disintegration warfare. That's what they call it. And it's really an effort to kind of undermine the United States, sow division and chaos. That's not to say that they caused these problems, but they make them a lot worse. And the problem is that some of our leaders are aware of this, but really don't say anything about it, don't challenge China. And I think that, at least in some cases, that's because they're conflicted.
Yeah, and this seems like a page from the old Soviet playbook, too, that something that they used to do with.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And the ancient Chinese strategist Sun Tzu, a lot of people have probably heard about that. They seem quoted on the internet. He said, the best strategist is the one that defeats his enemy without actually having to fight him. And that is the essence of disintegration warfare, and that is the doctrine that China's operating on today.
Yeah. Peter, what do you make of TikTok and, of course, the congressional bill that sailed through, 352 to 60-something? It was something that Democrats and Republicans can agree on, that TikTok and the way it is positioned right now is bad for Americans. What do you see moving forward with that company? And do you think somebody with American interest will try to buy it out?
Well, I sure hope so. While we're having this debate in this country about TikTok and is it a threat, there's no debate in China. And what I do in Blood Money is actually quote extensively from Chinese military publications and documents from the Ministry of Propaganda, where they describe how they are already using TikTok to manipulate young people in the West. One official calls it, the ultimate Trojan horse. It is absolutely a threat. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so the ins and outs of this particular bill, I know some people have expressed some concerns. I think the bill is good, and we should support it. And my hope is that it will be purchased by a group of Americans who want to maintain free speech. Some people have been, concerned that maybe Mark Zuckerberg, who owns Meta, Facebook, and Instagram, might buy it. But I think that's actually doubtful because I don't see how that would pass antitrust scrutiny. I mean, they already own two of the largest social media platforms. I can't imagine that would be approved. So let's hope it's a new company under American leadership that doesn't operate the way that Mark Zuckerberg does.
Yeah, and with TikTok, we do know the way the algorithms are manipulated. When people in China use TikTok, it's things that are fascinating, people that are achievers, and then for American users, it's just the dumbest stuff you can think of.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and that's by design. TikTok in the United States, you've got somebody in blue hair screaming about something on Douyin, which is the Chinese equivalent of TikTok. That's what they call it there. It's all about... And this is part of what the Chinese call cognitive warfare. They believe that part of the war they're engaged in with us is who's going to have the mental and intellectual capacity for innovation and growth and development down the road. And they see and recognize that TikTok is a very powerful tool to dumb down Americans, and that it's quite successful at doing so. In addition to that, they talk about how they manipulate young people in the West by, appealing to their emotion, that by appealing to the emotion of young people in the West, they think that it's sort of righteous self-indignation that they have developed by themselves when in fact they're being manipulated. But the point is, they believe once that they get somebody emotive on the platform, they are much more, it's much easier to manipulate them into embracing the values and beliefs that they want to advance. And there's a lot of evidence to show that that works that way.
Yeah, Peter Schweizer with us. The new book available everywhere now, Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans. That's available everywhere now. And one of the things, Peter, with China and TikTok was the data. And all of this data is going back to Beijing. But, Peter, I mean, in reality, isn't most of our data just available for any country to have, especially China?
It is.
Hey, Peter, you still there? We'll see if we can get him back here. But Peter Schweizer, again, this is #1 New York Times bestseller, available now. It was instantly #1, Blood Money. And Peter has done extensive research over the years. He's got a couple of books on China, and this one's the latest. And he's a nonpartisan investigator, too, which I think is very much part of the equation in his books and his findings. And some of the things that he has looked at before is the connection with politicians here with China, and that goes for Republicans and Democrats. And just finish up there, Peter, with the data and how much does China really know about us anyway?
Oh, they know a lot about us, and they're interested in data, not just about what you're doing online and your proclivities there. That's, of course, what feeds the algorithm, what makes the TikTok algorithm so valuable. By the way, it's not just a company secret. The Chinese government has recognized the TikTok algorithm as a state secret. That's how valuable it is. But they want information also on our DNA. They want to know about, the sequencing of our genes, and they have it in very curious ways. During COVID, there were tests being done, COVID tests being done on White House employees to see if they were, testing positive for COVID. Turns out the company that they were outsourcing that to was a Chinese-owned company, and they were literally collecting the DNA on senior staffers in the White House. So this just shows you the extent. And you wonder, well, so why do they want to know this? Part of it is they are developing biological weapons, diseases, et cetera, that will target specific ethnic groups. So if they wanted to go into, let's say, a part of Africa and say, we want this particular tribe targeted, with this DNA information, they will actually be able to develop diseases that target that specific tribe. It's really, really frightening stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're living in a science fiction novel now. It's what it feels like. Yeah,
it does, and we have to have political leadership that is willing to confront it. And the problem is, you have a lot of leaders in the United States. I would argue the president of the United States right now, who are conflicted. They're compromised because of financial ties to specific actors in China that make it very hard to confront China, even on basic questions like fentanyl. They simply won't do it because these entanglements exist. That's, the reason I titled the book what I titled it.
Yeah, and these entanglements go both sides, Republicans and Democrats, that are beholden to China for whatever reason, and we may know some of the reasons.
Yep. No, you're right. I mean, the Biden family, but also Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, also has these entanglements. I lay them out in the book. And you will find that both of those gentlemen really will say things about China that are critical, but China tolerates that. They have a phrase for people that they form these commercial bonds with. What they're looking for is big help with a little bad mouth. And what they really mean is they understand, for the purpose of political viability, somebody like Mitch McConnell or Joe Biden has to talk about human rights or has to talk about Taiwan. The question is, are they prepared to do anything about it? And the answer is no. So big help with a little bad mouth is what they're getting from people on both sides of the aisle. And it's a massive problem because this corruption is actually costing people lives. With fentanyl, with violence in our streets, these are all things, as I lay out in Blood Money, that the Chinese are exacerbating and literally causing deaths in our country.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to get to because, Peter, as you write about in Blood Money, a lot of people have surmised that we have a Cold War with China, but you make the case that this is actually a hot war that's going on, and a lot of people don't even realize it yet.
Yeah, that's right. You have casualties. Any war has casualties. The casualties that we have actually been millions of people over the last years. Fentanyl is certainly a part of that. We lose 100,000 people a year. That's more combat deaths than Vietnam forward. We're losing more than that every single year. And people that are dying of fentanyl poisoning oftentimes don't even know they're taking fentanyl. They think they're taking a Vicodin or an Adderall. It's a college student who's taking Adderall to concentrate for studying in a test. But the culprits here ultimately are not I believe, are not the drug cartels. It's actually the Chinese who are the senior partners here. Because at every link in the chain, they are the ones calling the shots. When the fentanyl is created in northern Mexico along our border, it's actually 2,000 Chinese nationals that are doing much of that work. When you look at the money laundering that the Mexican drug cartels use, back in the days of cocaine, they laundered money through Latin American banks. Now they're laundering them through Chinese state-owned banks, and they're often using, again, based on the evidence, they're often using Chinese students in the United States on education visas to do so. So this is China's repayment for the opium wars, and our president and Mitch McConnell really do not want to confront that reality and even call China out on it. It's really remarkable.
And Peter, they're physically coming, too, because of the open borders. I mean, we've got tens of thousands of illegal Chinese nationals and their young men, military age, that are moving into this country, and we don't know where they're at, and we've lost track of them.
Yeah, and we know based on things already going on in the country what at least some of them are going to be involved in. One of the things that's been happening since 2018 is that China has been smuggling into the country this device called a Glock switch or an auto sear switch. It converts a Glock handgun to a fully automatic machine gun, and they are marketing these and selling these to criminal gangs and drug networks operating in the country. You also have a lot of Chinese illegals that are involved in massive marijuana growing operations that are illegal. This is a very potent form of marijuana, not the marijuana that's legalized various places. But these have popped up everywhere from California to the state of Maine. In the state of Maine alone, there are 300 of these grows that are taking place, and all of them are being run by Chinese nationals here illegally, and they are financed from China. It's part of this cognitive warfare that's taking place. So, I'm sure some of them are coming into the country. They're seeking a new and better life. But we also know that some of them are going to be involved in these criminal activities that are undermining America and sowing chaos and tearing at our social fabric.
Yeah, and the Chinese are also buying up a whole lot of land in the U.S., too. And this isn't like oceanfront property. There's a lot of farmland and stuff out in the middle of America.
Yeah, it is. And some of that farmland is going for this marijuana growing. You see that, again, from California to Maine and in Washington State. In Oklahoma, the sheriff there says 95% of the illegal marijuana they're seeing grown is being done by Chinese nationals. So they're buying land because they need land and large facilities to do this. And, of course, they're also sometimes buying land in particular places near U.S. military bases. So it's a massive problem. We don't have a full grasp of it yet because what happens sometimes is, again, I've done research in the state of Maine. You look at the records there and you'll find that a lot of the land is owned by Canadians, but it's actually not. It's owned by Chinese nationals who set up an LLC or a limited liability company in Canada and then buy land in Maine. So it appears it's Canadian-owned, but it's actually not.
Yeah. Peter Schweizer, Blood Money is the book. And one last question as we're talking about all of the different fronts that China is fighting us on. And what about AI? How far advanced are they, or are they advanced, or are they behind where we're at? Because that'll be another plank in the ongoing wars in the future.
Yeah, it's hard to know, right? We don't know exactly where they are because they're secretive about it, but we know a couple of things. Number one, for AI to work at peak performance, you need data. You need as much data as possible about people. And in China, it being a surveillance state, they have much more data on people that will fine-tune and enhance their AI programs. So that gives them an inherent advantage. The other issue, though, is that big tech companies in America, Microsoft, for example, or Google, Alphabet, they do a lot of joint AI research in China, and this research includes with Chinese military-linked institutions. So we're actually helping them in their AI race with us. It's really remarkable and very troubling.
Well, Peter, the new book is Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans. And you can also find out more with the Government Accountability Institute. Peter, thank you so much for being with us, and best of luck to you.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.